We need thee every hour.
In the small town of Uvalde, Texas, an evening vigil for the victims of the school shooting that left 19 children and 2 teachers dead.
She was very happy and very outgoing. Loved to dance and sing and play sports. She was big into family, enjoyed being with the family.
Authorities have now released the names and pictures of the young victims. A medic who rushed to the scene described how, while treating one young girl, he discovered his own daughter had been killed.
She was hysterical, saying that they shot her best friend, that they killed her best friend, and she's not breathing. And I asked the little girl the name, and she told me, she said, Amory.
That's how you learn.
Police say the 2 teachers, Irma Garcia and Eva Morales, died trying to protect their students. Garcia shielding children in her arms, now leaving behind 4 of her own. The shooter's own movements tell a familiar tale. He shared his plans with people on Facebook Messenger and shot his grandmother before carrying out the slaughter.
Jill and I will be traveling to Texas in the coming days to meet with the families and let them know we have a sense, just a sense of their pain, and hopefully bring some little comfort to the community in shock, in grief, and in trauma.
That grief and trauma now giving way to anger as the focus turns to politicians like Texas Governor Greg Abbott, interrupted during a press conference.
The shooting is right now, and you are doing nothing.
No, he needs to get his ass out of here. This isn't the place to talk this over.
That's not a random member of the public. That's Abbott's political rival, Beto O'Rourke, a fierce gun control advocate currently running to replace him as governor.
He went to Santa Fe High School after kids were killed in their classrooms, told the parents he would do something. He did nothing. In fact, the only thing he did was make it easier to buy a gun. He says this was unpredictable. It was totally predictable, and I predict this will continue to happen.
Governor Abbott is actually scheduled to speak at an NRA conference later this week, while in Washington, Congress repeats the same arguments heard after every mass shooting.
The problem in the Senate is simple. Too many members on that side care more about the NRA than they do about families who grieve.
What Democrats in the press try to do in the wake of every mass shooting is they try to demonize law-abiding gun owners. They try to demonize the NRA.
While many Americans and the world ask why gun control remains out of reach, parents of the victims are grappling with a question of their own.
Oh, my baby, how do you shoot my baby? Oh.
That sound just sums up what all of those parents must be going through right now. And every parent that is in America fearful of sending their child to school every single day. Well, Steve Clemons is editor-at-large for news company Semafor, and he joins us now. Steve, in 2018, we spoke to you in the wake of the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, where 17 people died, 17 more were injured. I'm going to ask you what I asked you 4 years ago. Can anything in America change?
I tell you, I hope so. Eventually, hopefully, we'll see change again. What you and I talked about so many years ago was a horrible moment. We saw massive organization in the United States, massive protests held in the nation's capital, efforts to try to change things. And I told you at that time, regrettably, I didn't think change would happen. I was right about that, sadly. But we have another tragedy, and I just have to say that right now, until we see such a mobilization in this country and hounding of those politicians who resist any sensible gun laws, then it's unlikely to see the change. And I'll be talking to you next week, next year, down the road again, sadly, about future tragedies that haven't happened yet.
But Steve, there are some things where there seems to be a near consensus. So, for example, just look at some polling data that found that 90% of American voters at the very least want background checks. Something like 60% want tighter gun control generally. But even if just on the background checks, that's a huge number, 90%, and yet it's out of whack with the political response, right? So, like, at what point do the people win? There's obviously some massive distortion going on there.
There's a massive distortion going on, and at some point, but what you're saying is a very big problem in American politics, and it's it's the problem between cities, urban centers, and rural areas. And right now, the rural areas in America have an enormous amount of political power, more in terms of their relative weight than urban centers. And so this is a moment where that divide doesn't get solved. It gets more and more toxic and distant. And until we, I don't know, have more tragedies that we react to, or until we solve the political imbalance we have in this country, we're not going to solve this problem.
Steve, it seems to me that the dark irony is that the anti-gun control people are the same people who fight for your right to be born, and once you're out, you can just fend for yourself. How are they so passionate about babies in utero but not in schools?
Well, it's a great question, and it's very, very contradictory. But a friend of mine wrote a book one time, about the movement in conservative America is, we don't want to pay taxes and leave our guns alone, and don't touch God. And what you have in the abortion views in a certain part of the country is a desire to control women's decisions about their own body and life. But it's ironic that effort to control women and their right to choose how to govern their own body and whether to have abortions or not sits right along next to having no control over young people, an 18-year-old in this case, who went and legally bought a firearm and killed 19 young people and 2 other adults and injured so many other folks. So I think there is a very big contradiction, but when you get back to those lines of guns, God, and taxes, that is a real big problem in the American political system today.
Amazing thing is, it's legal for him to own and buy and use a gun, but not to go and have a drink of alcohol. Such a country of contradictions. Right. Steve, thanks so much for your insight.
Thank you.